as I conduct quarterly quantitative surveys of Gen Zers across America from age 13 to 24, I do always ask this one question over and over and over again. It's very simple. What is the characteristic, the quality, the attribute of a future employer that's most important to you? And of course, competitive benefits, competitive salary, all those things are important. But number one, far and away at about 36, 37, 38%, depending on the quarterly survey, is I want to work and be part of a corporate culture that is diverse and inclusive and where I feel like I belong.
Welcome to the Warriors at Work show. This is Jeanie Coomber, your guide and host. This is a show for men and women in the workplace who want to move from the predictable to the potent. This is your weekly dose of inspiration with an edge. I talk with CEOs and shamans, sports marketing executives and therapists. All of us are like-minded thinkers and doers who tell stories, share wisdom, and challenge each other to have the best life possible inside and outside the office. Welcome to your Warrior Conversation. Welcome to the Warriors at Work show. This is Jeanie, your guide and host. Thanks for being here with me today. Today, we're talking about Generation Z and how they are going to change the workplace. Yes, I said change the workplace. I have with me a Gen Z expert, author, professor, keynote speaker, Mark Beal, who really sets the stage for why organizations need to be thinking about this generation as they're growing and evolving their businesses and looking at their bottom line. Before authoring his most recent book, Engaging Gen Z, Mark served as a public relations practitioner and marketer for over 25 years, developing and executing public relations campaigns for category-leading companies and brands around major sports and entertainment platforms like the Olympic Games, Super Bowl, World Series, US Open, just to name a few. He now is fully immersed in the world of Gen Z and collaborates daily with Gen Z as a full-time professor of practice in public relations in the Rutgers University School of Communication and Information. He also is a regular facilitator of research and surveys of Gen Z, which has led to his keynote speeches around the country with various companies and brands and sporting leagues. This is a conversation you do not want to miss. This will really help you to understand how important it is that all of us as business leaders, whether you're an owner, whether you're a senior executive in an organization, if you're thinking about the evolution and the future of your business, this conversation is for you. Welcome to the Warriors at Work show. This is Jeanie Coomber, your guide and host, and this is your weekly dose of inspiration with an edge for all of my men and women in the workplace who want to move from the predictable to the potent. So today we're talking about Generation Z and how they are going to change the workplace. And I have the benefit of having a nationally recognized expert on the subject of Generation Z, Mark Beal. So Mark, thank you so much for joining me today.
No, Jeanie, thanks for having me. I love talking Gen Z and I always love collaborating with you. So thank you.
Yeah, and this is like such a timely conversation because all the businesses around the world are trying to scratch their head around how do we really engage all generations, but particularly this generation, which I know you're going to really expand upon their uniqueness. But what I want to first do is set the table. Let me tell you a little bit about Mark, and then Mark's going to describe himself in terms of why the Gen Z work. So not only are you a public relations practitioner and marketer for over 25 years, Mark has worked some incredible campaigns for the sports and entertainment world, the Olympics, the Super Bowl, the World Series, the US Open, just to name a few, by the way. And now he's completely immersed himself in the world of Generation Z, full-time professor in public relations at Rutgers University. He is a national keynote speaker and he's an author. All right, so Mark, describe yourself and why did you choose Generation Z?
Well, to your point, I spent 25 plus years in public relations, and Most of those years were helping major brands, Taco Bell, Coca-Cola, and others, engage the target audience. And for many of those years, the audience were millennials, right? So we were creating campaigns all about the millennial mindset and how do you engage millennials and all that. And as you said, those campaigns were leveraging, major platforms like the Olympic Games, the Super Bowl, even the Rolling Stones. And it was in 2017 when I left a course at Rutgers University and I was driving home and a light bulb just went off. And it was, while millennials have been the focus, come 2021, 22, 23 and beyond, this new generation called Gen Z will become the focus. And so it was just a light bulb moment. And I just started doing a lot of research, immersing myself in Gen Z, conducting one-on-one interviews, which led to the books, the articles, the keynotes. But now we're starting to see that play out here in 21 and 22. We're starting to see, as you say, HR and chief talent officers saying, how do we recruit? How do we retain? And the retain, I think, is even more important than the recruit, because getting them there is one thing. It's keeping those Gen Zers in the workplace. So it's been great. It's been an incredible ride. It was not something it wasn't something I necessarily planned. Like I said, it was more of a light bulb moment. And then once immediately okay, this is it. This is going to become the focus. And now that's, we're going on 5-6 years later, and I'm still uncovering the onion, right? I'm still pulling back layers of this Gen Z every day, every week, every year. So I kind of, look back and say, wow, just lucky that light bulb went off at that time, and also that I followed through on it, because we all have light bulb moments at work with passion projects. But sometimes we kind of say, oh, that's impossible, or that's never going to happen. But this one, I was pretty fast, focused on and pursued it.
Yeah, let's unpack that a bit, because there are chief talent officers, heads of HR, as well as business leaders that are going to be listening and are watching this conversation. And Gen Z is tech-driven, they're community-oriented, they're socially minded, they're the most purpose-driven generation we've ever seen, coming into the workplace for the next 15 years. So for all my chief talent officers, heads of HR, heads of businesses, what should they be readying themselves for?
You captured it so well, but I'll lead with a data point, because I think this surprises people. So as I conduct quarterly quantitative surveys of Gen Zers across America from age 13 to 24, I do always ask this one question over and over and over again. It's very simple. What is the characteristic, the quality, the attribute of a future employer that's most important to you? And of course, competitive benefits, competitive salary, all those things are important. But number one, far and away at about 36, 37, 38%, depending on the quarterly survey, is I want to work and be part of a corporate culture that is diverse and inclusive and where I feel like I belong. And we know that's really important today. Like we know just in society that's important. But the fact that this generation, which is the most diverse, the most inclusive generation, is saying, no, that's number one. That's not number like 2 or 3 or 4. That's number one. And if I go to this company, this organization, and I'm not experiencing that, well, I will leave. I'm not going to just stick around just to stick around. So I think there's a little bit of, different, an old Gen Xer like me, when you started your career, right? You took any reassignment they gave you and you put your head down and you did the work.
Salute and follow.
We did not. Yeah. I don't think there were discussions about diversity, inclusion, and belonging in 1990, 91, 92. But this is top of mind. This is a priority. This is important. So for, as you said, those chief talent officers, those heads of HR, it's one element, but it's a really, really, really important element. I think the other element, which you touched on, the idea of, tech savvy digital natives, they're looking to bring solutions to the workplace. They're looking to be efficient and effective with their time. So they're not going to just take orders or take assignments. They'd like to have a voice in the organization too. And it's a small one, but I'll just bring it up. So something like Slack, which, Gen Zers may be using at college as part of group projects, all that, they may go to an organization, and if the organization's solely relying on email, which, believe it or not, is now old.
I know. Isn't that wild? That's wild.
Yeah. They might say, have we considered maybe Slack as a platform for collaboration, as a platform to communicate with our clients? So again, it's just one small example, but they're going to bring that to the table. They're going to want to have a voice. They want to, and the one word I did touch on earlier, which I think is important, is belonging, right? And so someone gave me a metaphor once on this. I thought it was really good, right? You might be invited and included to the party, to the dance, whatever you want to call it. But belonging is when you get there, they say, hey, by the way, you want to play the music, right? Or do you want to do this? It's like, I really do belong. I wasn't just invited here and I'm sitting in the corner. I actually feel like I belong to this organization. Powerful, powerful, powerful stuff that if an organization can make you feel that way, you're not going to want to leave. In fact, you're going to advocate for that organization with your friends, with your followers, say, wow, what a great company I work for, those kinds of things. So it's pretty powerful.
So I know what belonging would mean to my generation, which is similar to yours, but what would a belonging experience look like or feel like to Gen Z?
Yeah, I think, and again, we've seen the evolution of corporate culture, as well as anybody. And I think belonging is, from day one, is that I do feel like I'm not just a cog in the machine. I wasn't just given a nice salary and a desk and a space and all this, but they're actually asking my opinion, my insights, what do I think about this policy or that policy? How could we improve the corporate culture? What potential innovations and technology could we bring here to make, more efficient? Now that we're in this kind of hybrid world of being back at work, but also working from, what's your opinion, even though you just joined us 3, 4, 5 months ago? What's your thoughts on that? So I think that's part of it, is just, again, the complete opposite would be I'm just a cog in the machine. I show up, I do my job, I get paid, I leave. Yeah, that's fine. It's baseline. But I really feel like this organization, like they're seeking my opinion, they're seeking my point of view on a whole variety of things that may not be. They may not all be serious issues. Like I said, they could just be, what kind of tech should we bring here? What did you use at college that maybe we should be using in group setting? So I think things like that.
Yeah. So what do you think's at stake if businesses don't embrace? I mean, you talked about this generation's coming into the workplace for 15 years. And I just want to underline that, because that is a long time for one generation to be entering the workplace. Mm-hmm. So what's at stake if businesses don't get their head around this particular generation?
I mean, to be blunt, they're going to lose great people, great talent pretty quickly. So this generation, again, is unlike me. They're not looking to settle somewhere for the next 25, 30 years. They will move around. And I'm seeing it now. So just to give you a sense, since I have been teaching at Rutgers, in my off time, my side time, I spend a lot of time helping my students secure internships, secure jobs. And then in fact, I just finished a phone call now, helping a student prepare for her next interview. But I'm also helping those students who are about 1.5 years, 2 years in, who are calling me and saying, what, I think it's time for a move. I think I'm ready to go. And 10 years ago, I might have said, no, stick it out for another 3 years.
Yeah.
And now I'm saying, you're right. At the end of the day, you only have to answer to one person, and that is you. And if you feel like the time is right to move on, the time is right. So I think they're, again, they've got their eyes, their ears open. They're constantly having conversations with their Gen Z peers. And then the other piece of the puzzle, which obviously has existed, but I see it more and more, Gen Zers are incredible entrepreneurs. So yes, while they work at this company as we'll call it their day job, they've got incredible passion projects, whether they are community-based, charity-based, or just a startup initiative. And they want to be able to kind of put a little time against that too. And I'm seeing more and more companies who are saying, we know you have other interests, other passions. We want you to be able to go out there and spend some time and invest some time in those and do that. So that's pretty interesting too, that, wow, I work for this company, but they want me to be able to work on kind of my side hustle. Now, the side hustle doesn't necessarily mean a side job. It could be, I've created a nonprofit, but they know about it and they want me to pursue that passion. That's powerful too.
That's such a distinguishing characteristic, what you just described. And that, to me, again, I'm immediately imagining various companies that I think would really encourage that. They have that culture of, we want you to have a really powerful experience inside and outside the office. I love that example. You were quoted as describing this generation as transformational chaos. Talk to us more about that.
Yeah, I think they're going to bring, again, I can always look at myself and say I'm the old Gen Xer, so that's always my out on this stuff. And as an old Gen Xer, 21, 22, 23-year-olds are showing up at the workplace, and I might not be comfortable with, recommendations and challenging the status quo. Why do you guys do it this way? There's so much more way to do it more efficiently, more effectively, all those things. And so this multi-generational workplace has, especially the Gen Xers, we've got to be more open-minded to, wow, this 21-year-old may actually have a solution that could drive business impact, drive business results, make us more efficient in what we do. They might even have an idea or two about, new sources of revenue or new streams of revenue. So I think that's what I call transformational chaos, meaning I believe Gen Z is going to innovate and transform the way business gets done. It doesn't necessarily mean on the grandest scale, but it might be on, little things that we've just been doing the same way for so long because we just do it that way, right? That's a terrible thing. We know that. Well, why do you do that? Oh, no, we've just always done it that way. That's the worst. So the key, though, is those managers and bosses and CEOs and CMOs and all, they've got to have open ears to that too, because they can't just, that's some 21-year-old just graduated. What do they know about our business, right? So they need to be open to recommendations, suggestions, ideas, and concepts, because I do think this generation will help businesses transform, but we have to actually listen to their ideas and their recommendations and maybe do a little testing and learning and trying it out and seeing what kind of result comes with it.
And when I think about the last year and a half, one of the other interesting attributes about this generation is their comfortability with change. So
Yes.
Thinking about those that haven't been able to tap into the last year and a half of this business cycle, but now have the opportunity as the market is opening up. I mean, in my mind, like this, let's go grab as many as possible, because all of the businesses that I'm talking to are reimagining how they're doing things, and it's real time. Like, now here we are in yet another awkward, are we in, are we out? Like, what are we going to be doing to really leverage this mindset to really pave the way for our future? I think it's like such an important time in history from a business perspective for us to tap into this generation.
Yeah, we are in a very fascinating time, as you know, when it comes to the workplace, business, how we're operating. I wrote a column in March, I believe 2020, as the pandemic hit, for the Sunday New York Star Ledger, that basically just said that this pandemic is going to expedite what I believe Gen Z was going to bring over the next 10 to 15 years, which was this idea of, more of this hybrid model, working remotely, using technology, 4-day work weeks, WFA, working from anywhere. Well, now we're seeing it, because now, as we're kind of coming out of the pandemic, to your point, every day is another announcement. I believe it was Friday, LinkedIn said, you don't need to return to work. You can actually work from home. And you've got other companies and other brands, maybe on the other side of the spectrum. No, we need you here 4 days a week or 5 days. And so it's really fascinating. I agree with you. I also have other cases of maybe smaller businesses, 50, 60, 100 person agencies that have said, wow, we worked pretty well together here during this pandemic. We worked well remotely. We didn't, we served our clients well. Why are we paying rent? Why don't we, in fact, I know one agency in particular has given up the rent, given up the building, and they've taken those funds, and I've heard this from their employees, and they've gone back to the employees with those savings. So all of a sudden, and I've got one former student who's at an agency like this, and he says, they delivered on what they said. They're not paying the rent anymore, so they're giving us that in benefits and perks and other things. And so he feels like, wow, this is a great organization to be part of. But to your point, we're in a very fascinating stage here in business. And Gen Z, I again, timing is perfect, because they, as you said, they could work from the top of a mountain. Just give them a mobile phone and a laptop. Yep. And so we're going to see a lot of transformation here over this year into next year, as far as where it all settles, as far as how companies really do conduct business. And we know that face-to-face collaboration is the best, right? We just know that. But I think moving forward, I keep going back to what I call the hybrid model, right? It's got to be a little bit of both, because all of us who've worked through this pandemic, we've proven that we don't necessarily need to physically be in that office every day.
The word that I've been using is optionality. That's the name of the game, optionality. And and to constantly have consciousness to that word and how we're operating, how we're making decisions, what rules and frameworks we're putting around things. And what I'm noticing is those that are very focused on this is the way it's got to be, this is the way it's got to be, are now going, okay, that's not going to work. Okay.
No.
We
No.
can't prove that productivity is less because we're in this hybrid or remote model. So I think optionality, in my opinion, is like the name of the game.
I think, Jeanie, you've got a book there, so let's get that.
It was said here first, Mark. Optionality.
And the second point to your point is those that are not considering optionality, and I agree with that, and are still steadfast, they're gonna lose employees real quickly.
Mm-hmm. So let's dive into some of the research, because you do a lot of surveys. And I want to pull out something that I learned from your research in one of your more recent surveys. You asked Gen Z, what do they want from the workplace? And they said they want a mentor, not a manager. This sort of shocked me. So tell me more about this.
Yeah. It's come up quite a few times with my Gen Zers. So no matter where we go to work, and again, you know this better than anyone, no matter where we go to work, big corporation, smaller group, nonprofit, right? You're going to have managers. And those managers are, day-to-day assigning tasks and all those things, which we're not going to get away from that, right? They call it work for a reason. We are doing work. But those Gen Zers are looking for someone within that organization, whether it's actually their direct manager or someone else, though, to mentor them, to help them, okay, how do I get from where I am today to perhaps somewhere else in a year? What are those SMART goals we can set every 3, 6, 9, 12 months, as opposed to just day in, day out, okay, I got my task done. Tomorrow I'm going to get more tasks done. The next, right, that's just the hamster on the wheel, so to speak, right? Mm-hmm. So they're hoping that there's someone, whether it's that manager or maybe it's someone who they don't even work with directly, but is 2, 3, 4 years ahead of them, who's just been where they are now, who's really looking more holistically at career evolution, career transformation. How do I potentially get promoted, take on more responsibilities over the course of the next 12, 18 months, 24 months. And so they want that balance there. They want that in addition to the work I'm doing and the tasks I'm completing and the assignments I'm being given. I'm hoping that can be complemented with more of a longer view of how do I get there? How do I get to where you are, since you were in my seat 3, 4, 5 years ago. So I think it's that just career, approach to career outside of the day-to-day, because easily as an entry level, I could do day-to-day work every day for a year and then pick up my head and realize, wow, I've been here for a year already. Great. But where am I going? Like, I've done this for now 52 weeks. Where am I going? So it's that, I think it's, like I said, I call it a compliment. It's okay. I'm focused. I've got my head down on the work, but is there someone in this organization that can kind of help mentor me, help guide me in my career? Because this is new to me. I just graduated college 3 months ago or 9 months ago or 12 months ago. This is all new. And it'd be great if there was someone who was mentoring me and kind of helping build my path to where I want to get to a year, 3 years, 5 years. So it's a nuance, but looking for mentors, not just managers.
And it goes back to what we were talking about when we started the conversation. If you think about the attributes of this generation, they're very purpose-driven. They've got a real sense of what they want to contribute to. And so it doesn't really surprise me when I think of a manager that has a very transactional texture to it, whereas the mentor, they take a personal interest in your growth, your well-being, your evolution as a human being, as a contributor. And it's very refreshing to hear. And I think that's very, very exciting, and really just, again, makes it even a broader case of, imagine if we all had people earlier in our careers that took the time and cared a lot about our growth and evolution first few years in our career. I mean, it's sort of astounding to me to think about. I didn't figure it out till I was in my mid-30s.
I agree with you. And I think, to your point, that does tie into this idea of belonging at a company, a corporation, right? So, wow, they really care about me. They care about my career path. I feel like, again, I think that ties into that idea of belonging too, which will help retain that great talent, because they see that, I'm not just completing these assignments and tasks, but they actually care about my future. They're giving me opportunities to grow and evolve here.
So let's talk about your work at Rutgers. I'd love for you to give us a sneak peek and like, what's it like to be in a Mark Beal classroom? What are you doing? How are you guiding them? What are some of the things that's coming up for you?
Well, I really like to bit of focus. I call it real time, real world. Some may call it experiential learning, but it's the idea of, since I have the fortune of teaching public relations and marketing courses, what's happening right now in the world of public relations and marketing? What are big brands, big companies? What are they doing to promote and market their brands, their products, their services? How are they engaging consumers? So in my courses, even when we were remote, I start every class with 15, 20, 25 minutes of what I call real time, real world. And it's very simply what's happened in the last 24, 48, 72 hours. And let's have a discussion about it, right? Dunkin' has partnered again with Charlie on TikTok for another campaign. Let's explore that. Let's talk about that. Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? And so it gives a chance for the students to immediately become engaged because it's on topics that are, maybe they're not all hip topics like Charlie and Duncan, but they're things that are happening right now. And typically what happens after the first week is then the students come to the class. Hey, professor, I saw this. What do you think of this? Or this came across on my Instagram feed. And then we can have a dialogue and discussion. So all of a sudden we've kind of broken down a barrier. And we're now, instead of just lecture and listen, it's really a collaborative discussion. And so I think that's big. The second part is really introducing them as sophomores, juniors, seniors to leaders in the field. So the first thing I do with every class, I'm preparing my fall courses now, is, if we're in person, we do this in person, we do introductions, but, virtually a lot of it was done by the course site. But I say, I want to know about your passions and your interests. And I break that down, passions, sports, food, travel, fitness, beauty, healthcare, whatever. Your interests from a career. Do you want to get into social media? Do you want to get into advertising? Do you want to get into event marketing? Once I know that, I'm going to actually connect you with a leader in the field and pair you up for this semester. And you're going to have the chance to meet this person and interview this person. And eventually, you're going to write a paper about it. But more importantly is the chance to expand your network with someone who's doing what you want to do. And so that's just another element of it. And I think those elements, again, provide that kind of real-time, real-world experiential learning. For my marketing courses, we bring in real-world clients and we actually go through a formal RFP process, request for proposal process. So I break the students down into groups of about 3 or 4, and they each, those groups will receive the RFP. And just like we did for many of my years in business, we go through the discovery process with the client, who's typically a CMO of a company, and they bring the brief to life, they explain what they're looking for, and then the students go off for the next 5 weeks with me to brainstorm. And I'll bring in marketers to brainstorm. And so 5-6 weeks later, they will then present their, and I tell them, I said, this is something that could go on your resume because you actually went through this process of creating a strategic and creative campaign for this company. So I try to weave all those elements into all my courses in one way or another to give those students that kind of real world, real life experience. And then separately from all that, again, is just my 24/7 helping them, again, secure that next internship, secure the next job, prepare for the interview, write their resume. And that's just something I'm just doing as a way to help the next generation.
Wow. So obviously, it also speaks to the incredible network you have, Mark, that you can get that caliber of professional and business executive in the conversation for real life learning. I mean, so incredible. So what are you learning? Being so up close and personal to this generation, how is it helping you grow and evolve?
It's when I present my keynotes, I try to throw in a few examples to kind of bring theory to life. Because when I present my keynotes, I'm presenting them to major corporations, professional sports leagues, marketing organizations, industry associations. So I bring examples. So there's one example, maybe this will bring it to life. So when the pandemic hit, there were 2 Gen Zers in New Jersey who could have been moping and whining that, oh, geez, we're no longer on campus, we're no longer socializing, we're no longer going to sporting events and clubs and all that. And instead, they sat in their living room and they said, well, yeah, but what can we do for others? Well, how can we help the world? All of a sudden, people have lost their jobs. They can't put food on the dinner table. And within 24 hours, they ideated and they came up with a concept called Making Lemonade, which was a virtual lemonade stand. So they, like an ad agency or PR marketing agency, they ideated, they had they identified a problem in society, which was people are losing their jobs and income's not coming in and they need to feed their families. Then they ideated, they came up with a campaign or a concept, a platform making lemonade. Within 24 hours after that, they reached out to another Gen Zer who's really good at web design and said, hey, we've got this concept. Can you create a website for us? And he had that up and running in about 72 to 96 hours. Wow. Agencies don't move this fast. Then within 5 days, they reached out and engaged 100 Gen Zers in about 30 cities across America and said, will you be kind of ambassadors for this campaign and socialize it? Bottom line is about 3 or 4 months later, they far exceeded their expectations. They wrote a check for, I think it was $125,000 or $130,000 to Feeding America, based on, again, sitting around, ideating, developing, executing, mobilizing Gen Zers. And so that inspires me, that and the many other examples that I come across inspires me so, so much to be like, boy, I'm doing nothing here. I've got a 16-year-old out in California, he's now 17 out in California, who just out of the blue reached out to me on LinkedIn. Hi, I'm 16 years old. Can I help you? I'm like, what? So then that idea of like just the entrepreneurial spirit, like they're not shy. And so first I thought, was this spam? And I responded to him. Next thing you know, we had a Zoom call. Next thing you know, he and I are collaborating on research around Gen Z. And it turns out he's at the time a junior, now he's a senior in high school, who's launched his own nonprofit, which is intended to raise and gain athletic equipment for schools in very poor areas that don't have funds for athletic equipment. Oh, and on the side, he's also a nationally ranked fencer. And oh, by the way, he's hoping to go to, whether an Ivy school or some other school. But it's those kind of individuals that just every day I'm like, all right, I'm slacking here. I gotta dial it up.
Step it up.
At 16, 17, 18, the mindset, the thought process, the carry through too, the idea that he didn't just have an idea for, I think I should come up with a nonprofit. No, he actually went and got the nonprofit, raised funds, got the sports equipment, donated it to the schools, and is, brought it full circle. So that to me, I come across that every day. And it just pushes you to be like, okay, what's the next thing for me? How can I help more people? Or what can I do? Or what's the next, So I think even out of that, like I created a YouTube series, a Gen Z YouTube series where I interview Gen Zers. That was even something that just probably came from something like that where I'm like, okay, I got to do more. I've got to be more creative. And so even like my own YouTube series just came out of, Gen Zers inspiring me.
Wow. And you can tell it feeds you energetically to be in conversation where you're just saying, what else could I do? How else can I help? Yeah. And, one of the things that I want people to know too, Mark is incredibly generous beyond your charter or your scope with Rutgers and what he does to personally invest his time and effort and his network to really create a space for Gen Z in the workplace. So let's talk about you a little bit.
Sure.
You as a human. What is next for you? What are you working towards, Mark?
Well, as I've said a few times recently, and I actually, I accidentally said it one day, but I kind of like it. I really, the first 30 years of my career, I selfishly focused on profit and making money. And there's nothing wrong with that. But that was what my focus was. Head down every day. How do we make more money? How do we get more clients? How do we win new business? And I loved every moment of it. But now I'm kind of entered in what I call the legacy side of my career, right? The next 25, 30 years. And for me, it's not about profit. It's about purpose. And it's about, at least in my case, it is helping others, and maybe I've focused a little bit more to helping really the next generation. Not that I'll help anybody, but I really am laser focused on how do I help today's 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-olds as they start to look at their career and start to think of how do I even get that job or that internship, like the interview I did this morning, helping one of my students prepare for a major interview with a major media company that I'm confident she's going to get. But we spent, 30 minutes on the phone just, here's when you walk in, here's what I want, here's what you need to do, here's how you make a good impression, here's the last question you're going to ask when you leave. Hopefully all those little tips will actually help her win that opportunity. And so that's really the focus now, is the purpose of giving back or paying it forward to these students who, like me, way back when I was going to college, was seeking someone or multiple folks to just give me some direction, give me a path, give me an opportunity, open a door and let me get in there. And so now I want to do that for as many as I can. So it was really gratifying this April, May, June compared to a year ago in 2020 when the pandemic shut everything down. And that class of 2020, I still call them the most resilient class ever because they lost everything. They lost the jobs and the internships that typically you're getting in May, June, July. And all of a sudden this April, things started to open up. And all of a sudden, agencies and companies were hiring. And it was so exciting because every day it was, we need to hire 5 more. This company called me, that company. And right away I had that pipeline and I would just immediately go to these students and say, this person at this company's hiring, let's get the resume over there right now. There were some cases when things were really hot, and it's still hot right now. But there were cases in late May, early June, I was getting calls from major marketing agencies submitting resumes at 9 a.m. saying, here's 5 great candidates who are all actively looking. At 9 a.m., by 5 p.m., at least in 2 or 3 cases, they called me. I already got the job. I said, you could have gotten the job. I just submitted your resume at 9 a.m. Yeah, they interviewed me at noon. They offered me at 5. I start next week. So it was great that the economy had kind of bounced back and jobs were open again because there's so many students now. And a lot of those were still class of 20 students who over the course of the year hadn't successfully secured a job because there were no jobs. So.
Wow. So who are those people, Mark, in your life that keep you focused and keep you accountable?
Well, my wife's number one.
Good answer, by the way.
Yeah, it's funny. I do come. My family is growing by the day. It seems like I already have, believe it or not, 6 grandchildren, including 2 twins who showed up about a month ago or so. So they're still my inspiration and motivation every day. And kind of probably what drives me every day because I've got this, again, this family that I feel like I've always got to kind of lead and help and assist and support. But when I think about the path I took where I went from, kind of the teaching to the research to the authoring books to the keynotes, I think about a guy like, who you may even know, but a guy like Stan Phelps, who I've known since, I don't know, the early 90s. He was a marketer for Adidas for years. So he was in marketing, worked for Adidas, worked for a few other companies. And he made a decision, it's probably now almost 10 years ago, where he said, I'm going to push that to the side. I'm going to see if I can make it on my own as this expert, this author, this keynote speaker. And his focus is kind of 2-part. One is on how do you turn customers into lovers of your brand? So how do you create these incredible relationships with your customers? So whether it's a company like McDonald's or FedEx or somewhere else. And then the other is how do you do the same with your employees? How do your employees love to come to work every day? And so he's written a series of books. I call them the goldfish books. There's the pink goldfish, the gray goldfish, but they're all gold. He has about a dozen out now. But that became kind of his platform. Creating customer love, creating employee love. And next thing you know, the books led to speaking, the speaking led to more speaking, articles, interviews, all those kinds of things. And I sat down with him. I remember it very well. I was passing through Charlotte and I knew he was in the area. And I said, can we grab lunch? And he just kind of laid out his approach and where he was and where he was going. And I got back on the plane that day and I said, okay, we're gonna make a go of this with this, Gen Z and the research and the authoring and the keynotes. And so he's always, he's been a really great inspiration. And I still turn to him with questions all the time. In fact, the first Gen Z book I wrote, it's titled Decoding Gen Z. And Stan had just flown in from Europe. He delivered a speech, flew into New York, was driving to Philly, I think, for a keynote. And I knew he had to come to New Jersey. And so I just said, you want to grab dinner as you're driving down the New Jersey Turnpike? And he said, sure. And so we sat at this Italian restaurant that I love. And I just kind of, he always, what are you working on next? What are you working on next? Always pushing. And I said, well, I've got this book. I'm 3/4 of the way through it on Gen Z. And, my thought on the title is this. No, here's the title, Decoding Gen Z. Done. That's the title. That was it. All over dinner. By the time we walked out, all right, got my title now. We're good to go. So yeah, it's people like that really inspire me.
So my last question to you is, a big part of this platform is for us to talk about all the things that'll help us elevate and create a bigger imprint in the world. But what are the things that you're working on within yourself that you are trying to grow and evolve through? Maybe it's even a struggle that you're having. So tell us a little bit more about your personal journey.
Well, part of my personal journey, and I bring this up a lot, I'm not sure why, but I spend a lot of time when I'm not in the office out on the roads, cycling, running, swimming, and that's where I get my greatest idea. So if I'm trying to tackle a business challenge or a problem, or I've got a keynote coming up and I'm trying to figure out how to make this keynote the best keynote for that audience, I get my greatest thinking comes when I'm out on the roads, when I just, these ideas come to me. And as soon as I get back, I start jotting them down and start applying to them. So that's a big part of kind of who I am. Fitness plays a role in inspiring me strategically and creatively.
You're really using exercise as a form of meditation, is to quiet down, switch gears, and allow information to come at you. And you are incredible at actioning things in a way to be in service to others. It's very much philosophically how I experience you. So Mark, what a wonderful conversation. I'm so grateful that you made the time to be here with me and with everybody listening and watching. Look out. Gen Z is coming in hot, and Mark Beal is the voice and the expert in this space. So I'm just so appreciative. Thank you again, Mark.
No, Jeanie, thank you. This was tremendous. I've been looking forward to this for so long, so thank you.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Warriors at Work show. If you are interested in learning more about what we do at the Warriors at Work show and platform, be sure to go over to my website, Jeanie Coomber, and subscribe to my monthly Warrior Playbook newsletter. I share everything that I'm up to month by month, as well as some lessons and insights that I've learned. I'm also interested in hearing any feedback you have about this conversation or future topics. So reach out to me directly on jc@jeanniecoomber.com or on LinkedIn. Be sure to tell your friends and your colleagues about this Warriors at Work conversation. Subscribe, review, and rate us. It's the best way to get this message out into the world. Be well.